As the COVID-19 pandemic spreads, leaders around the world are invoking executive powers, passing emergency decrees and legislation expanding their remits, using the crisis to grab more power. Joining us now, Susan Rice, former National Security Advisor for President Obama, former U.S. Ambassador to the United Nations. Her New York Times bestselling book is Tough Love, My Story of the Things Worth Fighting For. Susan Rice, thank you very much for joining us. Let's talk about Hungary, for example. The parliament there passing a controversial bill giving their leader, Viktor Orban, sweeping emergency powers that far-right political leaders in Italy are defending now and others around are modeling.
It's really quite extraordinary. We've had a problem, obviously, in Hungary for quite a while where Viktor Orban has repeatedly demonstrated his autocratic tendencies. But this power grab is near complete. He's taken all the reins indefinitely, and there's nothing to check him. And so we now have a member of the European Union that is essentially an outright dictatorship. And, you know, given the values, given the institutions of the European can be tolerated. We've seen it elsewhere, as you point out, from the Philippines, of course, where you wouldn't be surprised to see it, to Israel, where you might be surprised to see it, where Prime Minister Netanyahu has also used this opportunity to consolidate power under him and eliminate a number of freedoms that Israelis have become accustomed to. So this is a trend, and it's a worrying trend, and it's one we have to guard against and stand up very clearly in opposition to.
Now, Secretary Pompeo has seemingly backed down a little bit from what he has been referring to as the Wuhan virus. We've seen this after a call between President Trump and President Xi in China. But it did, the Wuhan virus meme that came from Pompeo did break up a G7 foreign ministers call last week, where they couldn't reach agreement on steps forward because of the insistence by the American Secretary of State that this be blamed on China.
Andrea, it's shameful. I mean, for the United States to be race baiting and to be a virus which never has a flag, can't have a flag, as being the provenance of one country, is designed to be divisive. It's designed to stigmatize people of Asian descent. And it's certainly not the way the leadership of the United States, the Secretary of State, the President of the United States ought to be behaving in the best of times, but certainly not in a crisis. The reality is that viruses can arise in any corner of the globe and spread to any corner of the globe. In 2009, when we were dealing with the swine flu pandemic, that arose in North America, in Mexico, and then in the United States before it spread across the planet. So it doesn't serve us well. It doesn't serve the objective of squelching the virus globally to brand it in nationalistic or xenophobic or racist terms. We all have to work together on this. We can stamp out this virus effectively, eventually in the United States. China may be able to do it on its side of the world, but if it's not stamped out everywhere, it will come back, be resurgent, and be our problem yet again. So the reality of this is we have a global problem. It's worse in the United States right now. It's worse, frankly, than it needed to be, given lack of preparedness, given a lack of focus, given downplaying of the threat, a lost 2 months where the administration didn't take the time that we could have utilized to put in place the mechanism so that we had the masks, we had the ventilators, we had the tests, and now we're playing catch up. But it didn't need to be this bad. When the President of the United States gleefully says on Sunday that we will have done a very good job if we can limit the deaths in the United States to 100 to 200,000 people, I'm not sure what circle of hell one has to be in for that to be a very good outcome. It's a tragic, terrible outcome. And now Ambassador Deborah Birx, the White House coordinator, is saying that's the best case scenario if we all do our utmost. So this is a challenge that we have first and foremost here in the United States, but it's also a global challenge. It's going to require all of us to do our parts, from social distancing to supporting our healthcare workers and our first responders. And it's going to require presidential leadership of a sort we've not yet ever seen from Donald Trump.
And finally, we just have a few seconds left. I just want to share one of your tweets, your tweet about Yamiche Alcindor. And you wrote, "You go, girl, pathetic when insecure men can't stomach strong black women." Brief comment?
Andrea, the only thing I might add to that is maybe I should have just said strong women, because he has a particular problem, it seems, with black women. But I think, as was pointed out in your earlier segment, it's a problem that applies to women with strong personalities and a willingness to stand up for themselves and their beliefs across the board. It's a sad thing. It's a reflection of one's own insecurity. It's not a reflection of the talent or the capacities of the women we're talking about. And I hope very much that we can move beyond that. It's so unbecoming in the context of a national crisis for the president to lash out at individuals, whether the governor of Michigan or the Speaker of the House or a reporter who asks a very fair, tough question. So, as I said, for us to get through this maximally, it's going to require each of us as citizens to do our parts. Thank God for the governors and the mayors and those who are stepping up and taking this crisis as seriously as it deserves to be taken. But at the end of the day, there isn't a substitute for leadership coming out of the White House. The White House needs to be stepping in, prioritizing the procurement, the federal procurement of masks, of tests, of PPE, of ventilators, and distributing them on a rational basis. They can't have states competing against each other, states competing against the federal government. It's chaos, and we don't need that kind of chaos. We need leadership.
Hey there, I'm Chris Hayes from MSNBC. Thanks for watching MSNBC on YouTube. If you want to keep up to date with the videos we're putting out, you can click subscribe just below me or click over on this list to see lots of other great videos.